Welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar on inflammation. Nowadays, there are a lot of conditions that end in itis out there. So itis, it's a disease characterized by inflammation. And a lot of people are told that inflammation is the culprit, that inflammation is the cause of many health conditions. But in actuality, inflammation is the effect, not the cause. It is the body's way of signaling that something is wrong, that the processes are not going as they are supposed to. And most of the time, it is because the body's owner is doing some improper actions. And the good news is that very often, these things can be easily changed or fixed. So today, we will delve into the heart of inflammation and explore what natural solutions Ayurveda and other healing systems offer. So Dr. Nature will talk about causes of inflammation, foods that cause inflammation, anti-inflammatory foods, natural ways of healing. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat, and we will be answering them along the way. Dr. Nature, please take away.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Irina. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to greet you all and express my gratitude for joining the webinar and evincing the interest in this subject. I know it is a very actual and current concern for many people who suffer conditions that arise from inflammation or the inflammation on its own, because inflammation can also be an independent health condition. And inflammation can be viewed as a root of the health conditions, but it may not be the final root yet. There's root for inflammation too. So getting deeper and deeper to the cause of the causes. So this is what we can talk about now. So inflammation, what is it? So let's see what we're going to cover today. And I was going to talk about the inflammation as it is, just give it the definition, and then the cause of it and the effect of it, the factors that lead to inflammation, and then where does it begin? What is the location, the initial location or area from where inflammation developed? Then systemic and localized inflammation, was the difference, and what are the common things that they may share? How the stress contribute to inflammation, and then Ayurvedic perspective on inflammation. And we'll just touch upon the autoimmune conditions as the consequence of inflammation, or the inflammation getting into a different rank. That's what the autoimmune conditions are, and how to reduce the chances for inflammation, as well as how to get rid of the present inflammation in simple things, just by introducing a little changes, modifications to our lifestyle, to nutrition, and maybe in our thinking and in our mentality, because that is a factor too. When we talk about where does the inflammation begin, we'll just mention some aspects of GI tract, because I guess, well, everybody kind of understand that things arise from GI tract, and many conditions, they're based on improper nutrition and improper eating habits. In the next webinar that we intend to have next week, we will talk more in detail about how GI conditions of different constitutions, particularly of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and I'm talking Ayurvedically right now, how they accrue and ignite the inflammation. What conditions that are particular to those constitutions that would lead to triggering the inflammation, and how this process would actually happen in each of these dosha. All right. So what is inflammation? Let's just get to the point. Inflammation is a process, pathological, of course, process that is conditioned by presence of a foreign body in one of the tissues, or in one of or multiple systems, organs, including GI tract, and any of other systems in the body. It doesn't have to be only one tissue. It could be a number of tissues, all tissues, especially when the inflammation is systemic. Then we may talk about the presence of the process in different tissues, affecting the organs simultaneously, getting the functions of the organs off of normal state. So what is that foreign body that gets into the tissue and triggers the inflammation? It is antigen. We know the antigen is also called allergen. Antigen and allergen are pretty much the same thing. Why is it antigen? Because it's against our genome, our normal function or structure of our tissue, something that is foreign. And it's not a nutrient either, because nutrients, in the way that our body requires them, would not be a foreign body. It would be the required nutrient, which is assimilated into the bloodstream from GI tract and can be utilized as either for the needs of energy or for the needs of restructuring and rebuilding the tissue. But if it is a foreign body, then it means it does not have the shape or form of the nutrient. So this allergen triggers the immune response. What is that immune response? Is the production of antibody. And we know a reaction, immune reaction, that is called antigen-antibody reaction, where our body starts producing globulins or special proteins to form blood cells, immune cells, to protect us from the invasion of the foreign body. So this is the trigger point and the baseline for allergic reaction and inflammation. Because once the antigen is targeted by the immune cell and eventually destroyed, then the immune cell also dies. When it dies, it is carried out of the body through the filtration system, through the liver. If it happens inside the tissue, then from the tissue into the lymphatic circulation, into the blood circulation, into the liver, and then out into the intestine, or from the liver to the kidney and out of the system into the external environment. But if this foreign body is not just in one single form, but it's in a multiple form, where we have multiplicity of these foreign bodies at the same time, and maybe continuously, day in and day out, that are entering the bloodstream, then we're talking about a mass production of antibodies and bigger scale of this antigen-antibody reaction happening initially in the bloodstream, but then different tissues, and the body will still respond and target the antigens within the tissues, producing the macrophages, the immune process that's called phagocytosis, when the immune cells neutralize and destroy the antigen, and they would do so inside the tissues. And once the reaction is over and the antigen is destroyed as well as the immune cell, these remainders may not particularly be able to eliminate from the tissue. They may stay inside the tissue, meaning that the system is not ready to fully eliminate metabolites of these reactions, while depositing and leaving as is those remainders of these reactions inside the tissues in order to deal with them later, of course. That is a very logical process. Just like you would have your priorities, doing things one after another, having things that you would do at a later time, so does our body. It is engaged with the more important things. And the most important thing for our body is to keep our blood pure. And this is where it works the most, eliminating impurities from the blood first. So how does this happen that these antigens or allergens, and what shape do they have, get into our bloodstream? Mostly the allergens are considered to be proteins, because it is the structure of the protein that our body views as an antigen. Most of the lipids, they may not specifically pose such threat. They don't have to be viewed as antigens, except for few times when the fats are associated with proteins, some lipoprotein compounds that come into our digestive tract as part of food, and if the lipids are transitional fats, like trans fats, heated oils that have lost their natural structure. They can also be considered antigens. Carbohydrates, just same as lipids, hardly may be viewed for antigens, except again one time when the polysaccharide or more complex saccharide can be associated with protein, and this happens mostly in the starch of grains, specifically wheat, maybe because they have the stamp of lectins, of gluten, and this is why the starch can also be viewed as an antigen by the immune system. The allergens of this type are contained within foods, of course, over 100 types of lectins particularly, maybe even more. They are part of grains and legumes and some of other plant-based foods as the preserving proteins, as well as there's a lot of lectins in nightshade vegetables, which are actually not vegetables, but berries, such as potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, bell peppers. There's a lot of lectins within the skin of nightshades and within the seeds of nightshades. They are highly allergenic to our system, as well as gluten and other lectins within grains. And most of grains have lectins other than millet is lectin-free, pretty much the only grain. And in legumes, it is lentils that don't have lectins and green peas. Lectins in split peas are minimal. There's still some, but not much. In other foods, there's some lectins too. In winter squashes, again, in the skin and in the seed. And what we want to do, especially people who eat a lot of nightshades, when you go into the grocery store, you see nightshades all over, as if there's no other foods, and they are the first choice. And they're very addictive. So their addictive nature is something else to talk about and why they happen. So removing the skin and seeds out of the vegetable, out of the fruit, let's say, of the nightshade. So that would be a consideration to remove the lectins from nightshade, and that way you can eat them safer. The lectins is one type of allergens. Another is trans fats, as I said, and a lot of processed foods, deep processed and industrial type of food, preserved food, bakery goods, they have a lot of trans fats. Whenever you see some prepared, ready-to-eat food, in ingredients you find some sort of vegetable oil, be sure that there is trans fats in it and try to avoid that. Now we get to a more complex and serious factor, which they're all kind of serious, of course, but this one stands separately. It is the animal protein, high molecular animal complex protein. Let's mention here that our body requires amino acids as far as the proteins go. When they say proteins that our body requires, they are right, but we need to understand proteins as amino acids, because the final or the building block to our tissue is the monomeric amino acid. It should not be in a chain, because the chain cannot be used as a building block. It's already a foreign body. And what happened with the animal proteins, and I'm not only talking about the animal flesh and meat, the muscle tissue of an animal, slaughtered, right? Which on top of it has the energetic aspect, of course, too, like emanation of death and pain and unhappiness. So this is very considerable too, but many people just ignore that because that's what they kind of adapt to, and that's not a factor for them. But anyway, another product is the dairy product, which is casein, main part of proteins in dairy products. Substance they make the cheese out of. So cheese is casein. There could be different types of caseins in different breeds of cows, of course, but the breed that's most popular now and the products that most of the retailers carry would contain type of casein that formally has the identical structure of our beta cells in the pancreas, the ones that produce insulin. And it is hardly processed by our digestion because high molecular proteins require very strong acids and intense digestion in order to fully be broken to amino acids. Since that does not happen, especially in us, because it's not our typical food, on top of it, we process it thermally, making the bonds even harder to break during the digestion. Some part, of course, will be broken down to amino acids. The rest of the proteins will not be disassembled to monomeric amino acids. They will retain some structure of the complete protein. And even though initially our lining of the intestines is intact and would not allow any particle like that to permeate into the bloodstream and it would remove it, eventually, when this process is continuous, then the gut and the lining of the gut weakens down, wears down, and begins to leach and leak. So here we get to the leaky gut syndrome. And that is a problem now because the fragments of proteins which pose the threat of the foreign body, will get into the bloodstream, will trigger the production of immune cells. And as long as we retain and have this process ongoing and retain the metabolites of these reactions, we subjected to suffer from inflammation. Okay, so we mentioned lectins, trans fats, and animal products, casein, and this is what causes diabetes type 1, juvenile diabetes, because it's autoimmune condition, not so a metabolic syndrome, because metabolic syndrome is a different. Diabetes mellitus number 2. There are other autoimmune conditions. There are more than 100. There could be multiple autoimmune conditions developing simultaneously in the body. Mucoviscidosis, thyroiditis, sclerosis, lupus, pretty serious autoimmune conditions. And they are triggered by allergies. They may be in remission, but if some allergen comes into the body, it would trigger the flare of the autoimmune condition, just because the immunity will begin glitching when there is too much of the foreign proteins fragments coming to the system, and the immune system has to put a lot of work into figuring and dealing with it. And some chains of animal products, or DNA chains, resemble the DNA chains of our tissues too. They may not be complete, but the immune system will start producing the immune cells targeting those fragments of the chains that can also resemble our own tissue proteins. And this is how immune system will start targeting its own tissue, and there we will have the autoimmune condition. So this is the foundation of the development of autoimmune conditions. Now, GI tract is where it all begins. It begins with poor nutrition and poor eating habits. Of course, there are a lot of factors out there that affect this, beginning from stress and chemicals in food, different types of digestion, of course. That's what we're going to talk about in the next webinar, about how Vata constitution, for example, can develop the leaky gut, developing the inflammation from the intestinal tract, how Pitta can do that, and Kapha, what are the factors for each of the dosha. But once the digestion goes off due to these factors, then fragments of proteins or some lipids, fats, enter the bloodstream undigested. The digestion inside of the stomach can be weakened by a number of factors too, and stomach is the chamber where the proteins get disassembled as the first step, which is an important step in protein digestion. So we want to always pay attention to the process of digestion inside our stomach and make sure that we secrete adequate amount and quality potency over digestive juices and acids. Make sure that we don't take the controversial combinations in the foods, for example, proteins and saccharides that can lead not only to oxidation within the entire body and glycation of the tissues, but also and initially the improper gastric or stomach digestion, which doesn't break down the proteins adequately enough, which then the intestinal digestion cannot finish. And that way, we are not having the quality available proteins for our body. Another reason for allergies is the heavy metals, and that we get from the external environment, from the air, because we all drive cars. And if you have the open window when you're driving and the truck runs by with a lot of exhaust going right into your window, then you get your dose of heavy metals that in older times, like about 100 years ago, a human could only accumulate within the time period of years, maybe, and you can do it just with one breath, as well as other factors like chemicals, processed foods in fields and in warehouses, inorganic, conventional, and even organic foods are very heavily sprayed with chemicals. Then those chemicals have heavy metals too. Then medications have heavy metals. Some fillers and supplements may also have heavy metals. Vaccines may have heavy metals, as well as the cosmetics may have heavy metals. So all those heavy metals, they get inside the tissues and bind to the inertive tissues, which are mostly the lipids or fat tissue and connective tissue. They are the reason to destroy the cartilages in the joints. They get into the extracellular matrix of the cartilage, then wear it down, triggering production of immune cells that should carry them out or somehow neutralize them. Wears down the cartilage. We end up with arthritis and rheumatitis, the disease of connective tissues. It's a big problem. Now, a lot of people concerned, and the tooth fillers, that's another thing, but I don't think that they do now, but still many people have mercury in their tooth fillings, and that could be a consideration too. So consider removing those fillers and replacing them if you have any. So that's a big consideration. A lot of people are concerned with heavy metals in their systems because that affects their brain function. Because our brain is also a protein actually that retains the heavy metals. And it is quite challenging to remove heavy metals from the neurological tissue. But there are processes, there are protocols, and there's ways to do it. And natural ways, they're most effective, even, I'd say, to deal with the heavy metals, and they can bring good results. So those are the factors that trigger the inflammation, with the major one is the improper digestion and improper food. How does the stress affect the inflammation? So stress affects our digestion, and not only general GI digestion, but the cellular digestion, cellular metabolism is also affected by stress. What is the stress? Is when our autonomic nervous system constantly present in sympathetic mode. So sympathetic response of our autonomic nervous system is flight and fight. We're always on the run. We're always on the move, busy and engaged, thinking and rushing at the same time. And this is the mode of life that we all adapted to and view it as a normal pace of life now. But yet the effect of it is that nervous system does not relax and it does not digest well. Because to well digest, we need to switch the mode into parasympathetic response, which is rest and digest, and only that state can be more balanced for our digestion to support the digestive processes in the digestive tract as well as on the cellular level. So if that is not fully achieved, then of course the undigested food matter would cause the inflammation. Generally, the state of the mind may be also vitiated, and hardly grounded. It may find an illusionary balance in having more food, especially if the mind is under the influence of Pitta dosha, which is the fire element. Then, of course, that triggers the digestive fire too. So it can be periods like the phases of rush and the phases of intense hunger. That period is not conditioned by rest digest response. It is still in the mode of fight and flight. It's just the projection is perverted. There's some conditions that are more localized than they're systemic. When they're systemic, circulating through the bloodstream or the lymphatic stream, the blood may carry antigens to different parts of the body, or just generally have antigens spread throughout the body. And when we talk about the localized, is when the body encapsulates the process for later time to deal with, because it cannot deal with it just right now. And that is the encapsulation or the cysts that can be dispersed through the tissue or condensed in one place. And if that happens, then that inflammatory process turns into a pussy cyst. And pus is the remnants of the reaction with the skulls and fragments of antigen accumulated somewhere in the tissue. For example, ovarian cysts, benign tumors, and the surrounding tissue around that area, around that encapsulation, cuticle, will continuously be inflamed and spreading more into the tissue, corrupting the tissue, changing the structure of the DNA of each new generation of cells. And a long-standing process that can be the basis for oncological conditions, as well as that pus inside of the cyst will also be a good substrate for fungal and viral infection. And viruses and fungi especially will join the process. They're also proteins. At least virus is a DNA chain, meaning that it's a foreign body anyway, and our body views it as such, as well as the molds. They're living beings, and they just enter the tissues in order to decompose further dead matter within the tissue. And these agents will also secrete their own metabolites like scum and sludge. And the scum is a very toxic and acidic substance to the tissue, to the surrounding tissue as well. Sludge will sediment, and that sediment is like a yield or very dense soil layer, something that you may step on when you go in the pond. For example, stagnant pond, and that sludge will be very tight and tough, and that's what actually then fills this encapsulation. That tumor now may have a very high density and become a real problem, because that sludge is now really hard to eliminate from the tissue. The body passes the point where it can do it by the internal means, and it doesn't need any intervention. But under the condition that we don't really pay attention to that, we don't even feel those areas inside our body. And the fungal infection, doctors talk about the fungal nature of the oncological conditions, and this is what it is. But how fungi get into the tissue is because they have the environment which welcomes them there and provides for them, accommodates them as a good living environment, and then they multiply. It's not the fault of the fungi, because fungi will go where they need to be, where the food for them is, where they need to do what they are designed to do, is to decompose the organic matter into inorganic matter to return it back in soil. This is their function, and this is what they're doing in the accumulation of these dead areas inside our body, where our body is not capable to eliminate that timely, because the process of accumulation of these toxins is ongoing, and we never break it. We never break this cycle and support our elimination system. We're always in the assimilation mode. We're always eating improper foods. We know that our digestion is not the best. We know that the symbiotic bacteria is suppressed, and the conditionally pathogenic bacteria, which is also part of microbiome, but is like a cleaning type of bacteria, is on the rise, is thriving, and our digestion is off. We may have conditions of digestive tract. However, we kind of tend not to look at that until we're really in a bad shape, like in the end stage of diversification of tissue, not when we feel on intuitive level or something's not right, because we all get that intuitive feeling of something's not right, but we tend to ignore it to some point. We then wake up only when the diagnosis is presented, and that diagnosis doesn't sound good. So up until that point, we kind of disregard things that our body is trying to tell us. That what serves as the cause for inflammation in the local area, in the organ, inside the thicket of the tissue or the skin, and we see it as the pimple or more serious like furunculosis, larger cysts that come up to the surface of the skin. And if they do that on the skin, then there's a high chance that they do that inside the body. And there we don't see that until it's too late, and then people end up with some bad diagnosis. So this is major consideration for inflammation. And now let's discuss how do we reverse this process, or how do we reduce the chances for inflammation. First and foremost, of course, is to deal with our digestion and make sure that our digestion is well optimized and balanced, and that we do not end up forming some improperly digested food essence that enters the bloodstream. Therefore, we need to make sure that we don't experience any difficulty digesting food, any symptoms like gas production, bloating, burping, heaviness, sluggishness after eating, things like that. They're like the first signs, I'd say. Something on intuitive level that you think that don't sit well with you, which means that it's not specifically your individual intolerance to it, it's just that your microbiome is not well adapted to it. And these conditions need to be addressed as quickly as possible. Then we know that the digestion is off when we eat too much or too little, deviations with appetite and the type of foods, too intense craving for something. That means that bacterial overgrowth may be going on. That doesn't mean that your appetite is good, but it's just that your bacteria is off, especially if at the same time you're putting on weight or you're losing weight. Knowing that no fungal infection within your intestinal tract, especially candida, a big factor for the leaky gut. Then reducing your stress, of course, and other factors that I've just mentioned, including the external environmental factors and indigenous factors within our body that will be helpful to regulate and balance the digestive process. And the quality of the food, of course, the saturation of your food with essential nutrients is very important. Of course, the foods out there are very poor quality, not like they were 100 years ago, but sourcing them in different other places where you know they've been grown in a most mindful way with all needed care and content in the soil, all minerals that are needed on good quality soils. Processing your foods as less as possible, of course, avoiding all processed foods, but then when you are making your own food, try to eat fresh as much as possible. Raw is the best, but if your digestion is not yet accommodated to digest the raw nutrition, then you can cook, but cook minimally to what you can tolerate. Don't allow the food to get stale in your refrigerator for 2-3 days. That's not good, because then cooked food that's refrigerated for a number of days, it loses all nutritional value and the ability to assimilate and be digested properly. Of course, then take supplements, but prior to that, make sure that your digestion, like your intestinal tract, intestine, stomach, and organs, they now and then they need to rest, as well as you do, like organs need to rest, and we should not overload them. That means that now and then we need to do some fasting times, intervals in our eating, not eating too late, giving some rest and vacation to our organs for a day or two, making sure that our water is good and pure and maybe charged with hydrogen ions. That's the best water. and antioxidants, of course, because stress and other factors, as well as the nutrition nowadays, they bring a lot of the free radicals to our body. So go for those foods that contain more antioxidants. And the hydrogen ionized water is a great antioxidant. And give rest to your digestive tract, like I said. Reset your microbiome now and then, just kind of supply better bacteria, more like symbiotic bacteria in some fermented foods, sauerkraut, kombucha. Kombucha is a good fermented drink that can be very beneficial in needed quantities. Don't overdo it either. Increase your enzymic production, your own enzymes, because our digestion can be divided into phases. The first phase is enzymic, is when our body works on the food first. Nature has made our body to be responsible first. And then the bacteria takes over as phase two. So next one is biotic. So the first is the enzymic, the second is biotic. So the quality of the enzymic phase of the digestion will define the quality of the biotic phase of digestion. That means that we need to secrete good enzymes, qualities and quantities of those enzymes, starting with the hydrochloric acid. Number one actually starts in our mouth, that we need to chew extensively. Simple saccharides, they absorbed in the mouth, and we break down the fiber better, of course, while chewing, and the initial enzymes are in the saliva. So this is the first chamber of our digestion. Extensive chewing is the defining factor for how successful your digestion will go. And when we are in flight and fight mode, we tend to chew quickly or just bite and gulp, which is not proper way and definitely will affect the digestion negatively. So chewing well in the mouth first, salivating well over food, and then making sure that the stomach produces good quality enzymes, pepsin and hydrochloric acid, the two main enzymes there. For some constitutions, we may introduce some, different spices. Spices are good stimulants for the enzymic production, both in the stomach and in the intestine. And then intestinal enzymes like trypsin, amylase, lipase, and bile assure the good production of those. That means that no overeating, eating to maybe 50 to 75% of fullness is the key for successful digestion, accompanied by the extensive chewing. So that will assure your good digestion, as well as, of course, fresh food, the good quality food. The first part of the digestion, which is the enzymic, is over. Then the symbiotic bacteria takes over, breaks down the fiber, breaks down the rest of the components, and produces good essential vitamins, enzymes, and amino acids, and other nutrients that our body needs. If the first part of digestion is well regulated, then the second part of digestion will also be well regulated, and there will hardly be any case or the need for the bowels to overgrow the bacteria. The overgrowth of bacteria is the response to the poor enzymic phase of digestion, where the body just multiplies the bacteria in order to work on the undigested or poorly chewed or poorly digested foods in the first phase. And then leads to gas formation, stretching of the intestinal wall, and of course thinning down the lining and permeation of the bowel with a leaky gut and growth of pathogenic bacteria, as well as the fungal infections such as candida. So those are the ways to reduce the chances for inflammation. In the current inflammation that you may experience throughout the body should also be taken care by these simple initial steps, where you reset your GI function, assimilative function, also elimination function that is pertinent to the GI tract, right? Because it's doing the dual work of assimilating nutrients and eliminating all the wastes. The inflammation will reduce when we help the body eliminate the remnants of the antigens from the tissues on the cellular level first, in the interstitial space between the cells, back into the lymph and back into the bloodstream. So we have to ratio the process of metabolism, eliminate, assimilate, towards elimination, emphasizing elimination process more. That way, the body will start working on those deep concerns that it has in the tissues, and start pulling antigens, the foreign bodies, the causes for inflammation, from the tissues back into the bloodstream, lymphatic stream first, and then through the bloodstream into the liver, where they will be disassembled and reprocessed, and then eliminated back into the intestine or through other elimination pathways. So that's the way how we get rid of inflammation. This is the true way of getting rid of inflammation. There is another way of getting rid of inflammation, which is the medical way, which when they give a medication to shut down the production of antibodies. Antigens are still there, but antibodies, the body is not producing them because the individual takes the medication. They are called antihistamines, medications that shut down the production of our immune cells, substances that are not really helping, as you see, right? Because what's the point of shutting down the response of our body? Is it the real way of getting rid of inflammation? Of course, it's actually a bad favor. This is what happens. If there is no inflammation, the individual will not experience any pain, any concern, any, for example, edema in the area. For example, in the knee, there is no edema, there is no pain there. And what would they do in that case? If there's no pain, they would think that they are feeling great and they would function normally. Or maybe beyond that, they would continue doing some bad things, taking some bad food. And what's the point? The point is, in this case, that they would just accumulate and exacerbate their existing condition, which after medication wears out, will manifest even at a higher intensity. And as the ultimate solution dealing with inflammation would be doing the detox, which helps the body eliminate and removes the accumulation of the toxic waste products, including the heavy metals, fat-based toxins, as well as the water-based toxins, remnants of the dead matter, purifying the tissues, and making the individual feel better and getting out of those conditions naturally, little by little, gradually, truly getting better, reclaiming their true health back.
We have a few
Any
questions.
Of course.
The first question is, what are the major inflammatory foods? I
And
believe you already covered that.
Inflammatory.
Inflammatory.
All right, so they would be the chemically polluted foods, stale foods, old foods, then high lectin foods, overprocessed like trans fats, those are inflammatory foods. Any food can be bad if overeaten, of course, and high molecular, and that's important to know, high molecular polypeptide chains, complex proteins, such as lectins and animal products, caseins and animal proteins, and also starches.
Strongest anti-inflammatory food.
Yes, there are herbs that are specifically targeted to produce the astringent effect in the tissues, like bitter herbs and bitter roots. For example, turmeric, burdock, peppermint, and some of the spices, astringent and bitter spices. They can be good chelators for heavy metals. Cilantro, for example, parsley, good removers of those metabolites and decay from the tissues. Greens, vegetables, the fresher the vegetable, the better it is. And also sour fruit juices and minerals like shilajit or seaweeds. Let's say seaweed, sour fruit juice, and green salads and fresh vegetables. They are the best anti-inflammatory foods. And then the astringent and bitter spices.
What about fruit? Because fruitarianism is becoming so popular.
Yes. Well, within the category of fruit, we need to also separate, because fruit can be accounted as the separate nutrition, whole and complete, requiring nothing else, but under the condition your body is ready to work with energy, because fruit is the energy. It's more the energy than it is the body. And if your body is ready to convert energy into the physical matter at a very high flowing level of metabolism and your consciousness, then at that point you need to separate fruit still into the groups. And one of them is the sour juicy fruit, and the other is the starchy sweet fruit. This is the initial systematization of fruit. And If you are not ready to have fruit like that, but you're still eating other foods, then consider not eating fruits at all until you're ready, or consider eating them correctly. And correctly in this case would be you would start with the sour, juicy fruit in the morning, and then you can have like a snack or even lunch with a sweeter or sweet starchy fruit, under the condition that your energy needs exceed the intake of the fruit. That means that all the fruit needs to be converted into energy right away and not into fats. That means that you need to undertake a lot of physical activity while eating fruit, because under the other condition, it will convert into LDLs, bad fats, well, because your body will store the excessive energy into fats. And if you're just eating fruit for enjoyment, it's wrong. It's not a correct way to eat fruit. And once you had any other food other than fruit, I mean, then you don't eat fruit after that at all for the rest of the day. Like, for example, you take the sour fruit juice in the morning, and then for lunch you have some grains or legumes. That the indicator for you not to have any fruit after that. And under that condition, you are doing it correctly. No other way is really correct.
Can inflammation cause cancer?
Oh, yes, but in this case, inflammation would actually be a cofactor in the development of cancer. The main reason for the development of cancer would be accumulation of metabolic waste, which turns into pus. And then on top of this, inside this encapsulation, there will be a fungal infection. And the fungal infection, or viral infection that joins this process, can further add to the process of mutation of this encapsulation, accompanied by the inflammatory process, of course. That would be the accumulatively causative factor for cancer development.
Thank you. I did
Sure.
want to mention for those of you who are interested, we have a detox program coming up. It's available at any time, but we only do guided runs a few times a year. So the guided run of the detox program is starting at the end of March, and it's a 3-week complete detox program. Let me see if I can pull up the information real quick for you. So it's basically a retreat quality detox in the comfort of your own home without taking time off from work, where you do not really have to fast. So we only do it for 1 day, but the program is scalable. That's the beauty of it. So if you do want to fast longer, you can definitely do that. What makes it special is that we ease you into it. So during the first week, we prepare the whole body, we change our nutrition, we do special detox routines, some Ayurvedic practices. During the second week, we further reduce our nutrition. We do vegan keto for the most part. And then at the end of the second week, we do Shanka Prakshalana. It's a sacred Ayurvedic saltwater flush. And after that, we fast for the rest of the day. And then during the third week, we slowly rebuild our microbiome. So this is what Dr. Nature has been talking about. So with Shanka Prakshalana, we completely obliterate the bad gut bacteria, and then we rebuild it through first fasting, then juicing, and then raw foods. So, and this program is great for any conditions such as excess low weight, headaches, high blood pressure, inflammation, skin conditions, high cholesterol, digestive issues, you name it. What makes it even more special is that it doesn't just cleanse your GI tract, it cleanses the entire body, basically, even on the cellular level, due to the combination of all the routines and Ayurvedic practices and nutrition and special yoga exercises, which are pretty easy to do. Yes, and it pulls toxins out of the lymph and blood and cleanses the filtration system, liver, kidneys, and the skin. And what's important is that we teach you about these things. So we provide education on detox as a healing modality. So we show you how to dislodge the toxins from your body and how to guide them out in a safe manner. The course has video lessons, weekly online webinars with us, daily support in Telegram. Daily, we answer your questions all day long. There are recipes, plenty of recipes, everything for sauces, dressings, and vegan keto dishes, whole foods, plant-based dishes, and juices, and and everything in between. So it's a great program that provides you with knowledge and experience to keep you going for many years after that. So if that's something that interests you, we offer a $50 discount. Just reach out to us.
It is the kind of detox that answers all your questions as far as what detox is and how to apply it in practical life and how to really have results. It is scalable. 3 weeks is the average amount of time that we go for, but you can scale it and have it for longer time. And each phase of the detox, you can scale as well. For example, you can scale the vegan keto phase, or you can scale the juicing phase, or rejuvenating nutrition phase, or you can scale the fasting phase. For some people who are interested in particularly fasting, then this program offers the correct way to enter fasting and exit fasting, and things to do when you're fasting as well. So it's everything that you want from your detox. It can be done during the days that you work and you actively engage in your regular activities, as well as you can do it as a retreat when you are on vacation and staying home. Even if you travel out and somewhere in a resort on a beach, you can also apply that. That actually can bring even better results if you do it under the sun with a longer juicing phase. So that can be like really healing for both for the body and for the mind too. And we also talk about the mind in this detox. We do touch upon this aspect about how to purify the subtle energies as well, which is the next level of progress on your spiritual path. But we just only touch upon that in this program. However, this is the basic program that you would begin with. Any more
Thank you.
questions?
I actually see some people in our today's group of participants who took our program already.
All right, wonderful. Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is meditation able to eliminate the existing chronic inflammation in the body? If yes, how?
Meditation eliminates the inflammation. Meditation enhances the antioxidants in the body because it introduces the energies of enhanced chi. So the chi energy is the best antioxidant and can balance the acidity. And acidity is the effect of inflammation. But meditation in this case need to be also practiced intensely, because sitting just for 10-20 minutes, especially people who do not do it with full understanding on how to do it, and if the mind is in the way of the good process of meditation, then the results may not be as desired, and you may hardly see any improvements in your inflammation just based on meditation. But if your mind is calm and tamed and stable, and you know the technique on how to enhance the energy flow through the body while meditating, and you do it long enough to enhance this process, then that can show the effects of reducing the inflammation. But those three main factors that really do matter in order for meditation to produce that effect. If you're mastering those three factors, then you're on the right path.
These are all the questions that we had. Thank you all for joining us today. Join us next week. Be on the lookout for announcements, and we will be discussing digestive issues, correct? And natural ways of healing them.
Yeah, and inflammation connected to digestion and digestion of different constitution types.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you everybody for coming.
And there will be a recording of the session. Thank you.
If you find this video helpful, please give it a like, share it with your family and friends, subscribe to our channel, and get notifications. Also, leave a comment of at least 8 words. Comments make difference.